Hi, this is Andy Hoffman of CryptoGoldCentral.com, which publishes a daily cryptocurrency blog and provides professional crypto consulting to individuals and altcoin developers alike. This week, my guest is Francis Pouliot, whose extremely popular Twitter handle is @FrancisPouliot with the underscore at the end, and he's not giving away Ether. Francis is one of the Bitcoin community's most successful entrepreneurs with a broad knowledge of everything from transactions to storage and mining, serving as the head of research at blockchain consultancy Cadillacsy.com and the CEO of Bills, spelled BYLLS.com, an online Bitcoin payment service. If a Mount Rushmore of Bitcoin experts was to be carved, not only would he be on it, but likely its youngest member. To that end, welcome, Francis, once again to One-on-One.
Hi, Andy. How's it going? It's great to be here.
Awesome. I mean, I'm so excited. We have so much to talk about in this mile-a-minute world of crypto. And each week, it seems like we have a new out-of-left-field topic that jumps to the top, more dire than the next, which I say in quotes, as Bitcoin's future is already cemented in stone, which the inexorably rising hash rate and use cases make it nearly impossible for any extraneous factor to stop. That said, the vast majority of the world has no idea what it is yet, and with the sector continuing to consolidate last year's epic price surge, in which the .com-like altcoins that led it are being exposed as the pump and dumps 95% of them are, sentiment toward the sector in general could not be worse. The fact remains that at $200 billion, it remains a microcap sector relative to mainstream assets like stocks and bonds that is constantly under fire by a status quo that, rightfully so, feels threatened by it. Thus, it remains negatively susceptible to any and all news, like last week's complete non-event that the SEC delayed for 45 days its decision on the SolidX Van Eck Bitcoin ETF. This week, the news is far more relevant to cryptocurrency's future, but like the ETF news, is not in the slightest bit negative for Bitcoin. In fact, while the ETF delay is best characterized as neutral, the news that Bitmain, the world's largest Bitcoin miner, is in dire financial straits due to its ill-fated, historically hubristic decision to support the BeCash Ponzi it created is unquestionably wildly Bitcoin bullish. The reason being that BeCash has been suppressing the Bitcoin price for some time by selling it to artificially support BeCash. And now that it has little Bitcoin left, there's no way it will be able to maintain the ruse, especially as it hopes to go public next month in an IPO that may or may not get done. Since the news emerged this weekend, when BeCash posted its first quarter, but ominously not its second quarter results, the market took the BeCash to Bitcoin ratio below 0.10 for the first time in 4 months, down to about 0.083 as we speak. To that end, Francis, what's your take on the Bitmain revelations, and what does it mean, in your view, for the near and long-term future of BeCash, Bitcoin, and altcoins in general?
Yeah, wow, it's such a big topic. I don't even know how to approach it. So I guess my first reaction when I saw Bitmain's pre-IPO pitch deck. Actually, I didn't actually read the pitch deck itself. I just saw a lot of screenshots on Twitter. So I'm assuming that they were real. I think.
It was real. It was a 40-page document. Yes, completely boring. All that matters is what you saw.
Yeah, exactly. So I like everyone else, I saw the abstract that everyone was posting, and the only news of it that I read was their financial statement position of their holdings, where it was revealed that they were holding a 1 million coin bag of BeCash. And this is, I think we talked about this already.
And this is, by the way, Francis, at the end of the first quarter. So since this was published, we've had April, May, June, July, August.
Yeah, and unless they reverse their strategy somehow, I think it's safe to assume that their BeCash bags have been getting bigger since they've been continuing to mine. And relatively, the price of BeCash it hasn't fallen, but it hasn't been. I don't think Bitmain has been exiting BeCash already. So this is something that we talked about. I think a lot of us had this idea, and I think it was even on this show or another show where I was saying, perhaps this is all a giant fuck up right? And Bitmain was, because in order to understand like how this thing started and how Bitmain came to have 1 million BeCash, you gotta remember that when they launched BeCash, it was something called Bitcoin ABC. So when we did the UASF, user activated soft fork, Jihan was triggered because of his humongous ego. And he said, well, if you guys do a UASF, I'll do a UAHF, a user activated hard fork, which doesn't make any sense. He got people to code this thing called Bitcoin ABC, which was a client that would hard fork of Bitcoin. But if you remember correctly, after SegWit got activated and after S2X was defeated, they abandoned the idea of doing the fork, right? So Bitmain had made a statement saying, oh, we're gonna, the New York agreement has been canceled, and we're gonna fork off to 2X. So it wasn't actually Bitmain that launched BeCash itself.
No, it was via BTC.
Yeah, so it was like a Bitmain proxy. I think the story there that back in the day, that's what we thought. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that via BTC was in fact a subsidiary of Jihan, but they were really radical and they really actually did believe in their Satoshi's vision thing. So you got these guys via BTC and some developers that just launched Bitcoin ABC, and it later became BeCash.
Yeah, it's so funny because you bring this up, and so many people think that BeCash was this elaborate scheme that was planned ahead. Like you're saying, it literally came together. It was almost like when SegWit got locked in and they realized they were soundly defeated with their Bitcoin Unlimited fork. They're like, we got to do something. Let's just do this BeCash, and they had to get it out before SegWit locked in. They had no idea what they were doing. And here we are a year later, and you could see that they really had no idea what they were doing.
They had no idea what they were doing. And, BeCash is like an abortion that got resuscitated, resurrected. Like literally, the project got aborted and it was resurrected by other people. And then I think when it started to get legs, for some reason, Bitmain did engage in a lot of BeCash mining. And even though they coded it, they didn't launch it. Right, some other people started to launch it, and when it was launched, I think they said, "Oh well, it's launched, and we're committed to this position, this political position. So we're going to mine this thing." And then one of the things they started to do was they started to attack Bitcoin by doing chain hopping mining. So they would point their hash rate from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash to Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash, and they actually did so to a degree where because of the emergency difficulty adjustment algorithm that BeCash had coded. In itself, they actually started to like print BeCash, right? They started to print a lot of BeCash with this exercise, and I think they were unable to sell. And at some point, it feels to me like they got sucked in this thing and got so committed that they just doubled down. They just kept double down on BeCash, and now they're completely stuck with the bag. So
how I equate it. I've done tons of articles. I always talk about the movie Fargo. Where at the beginning, the guy, the main guy, he needed a little money because he owed some money. So he said, let me get this scheme where I pretend that there's a kidnapping and my wife gets some ransom. And then he keeps digging deeper. And by the end of the movie, everyone is dead. Yeah. And I think that's a perfect example. Do you think that they ever really believed in, again, Roger Ver is not a technical guy. He's just a salesman. Do you think that they ever really believed that this was going to replace Bitcoin, being that they are the biggest Bitcoin miner? Because they had to have believed that at some point to have taken such an unbelievable risk to the point where they created a Ponzi scheme that they are sitting right under right now.
I don't think necessarily they believe in the big blocks per se. I think what they believed in is that miners control the network. I think they truly did believe that. And whether it was bigger blocks or they just wanted to prove that they could affect a change in the network or stop a change from happening in the network. I think a lot of the big Bitcoin companies that Bitmain is different. Bitmain is a weird animal. It's hard to understand why, because it is a profitable business. Like, how can they screw up so hard? They were manufacturing equipment, selling equipment, operating services for miners, which are profitable and good services like tools. So it's not the same as blockchain.info. If you look at blockchain.info, that block explorer, I understand why they may want to prove that they control the network, or they have influence over the network, because they have no revenue model, right? So if you're investing in blockchain info, you're investing in the idea of investing in a big player that can affect this new monetary system in the future. And blockchain info, even though I don't know, I wasn't at the pitch meeting, I don't like this company at all, I'm willing to bet that at some point it was told to investors, we're the world's biggest explorer, so we decide which chain is Bitcoin. Because blockchain info, for example, they can just show on their explorer BTC, Bitcoin, the ticker, with any kind of network they want. And whether you like it or not, it has millions and millions of users. I still intuitively just go to blockchain info when I'm looking for Block Explorer, even though I shouldn't, right? So Bitmain, I think they believed in the idea that miners vote and miners control the network, and the existential threat wasn't like small blocks. It was the users that were telling them, no, we don't work for you, you work for us. I mean, we're the ones paying you to produce these things. And maybe it's supply side economics. I don't know what economic theory is behind. But the result is the same. So what the result is that we're going to talk about BeCash later and what in relation to Bitcoin, but they made a massive mistake by investing in BeCash. Not only because it was detrimental to Bitcoin, it was also detrimental to themselves. So what can you do if you have $1 million worth of illiquid shitcoin? And
we'll put this way. Let me stop for 1 second before we get to how they're going to extricate themselves from this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, the point is, the best word that I can use for it is hubris, because like you said, they believe that because they were so powerful that they could do anything, and they underestimated the network. And frankly, when they saw the UASF win, I mean, think about it. In June, when they said we're going to do our UAHF, the whole Bitcoin network was terrified, including myself. And less than a month later, SegWit locked in. That's how powerful the Bitcoin community is. And yet they still went forward with this, because when people look at Bitmain, they say, oh, they're this big profitable company. Again, you're saying they were a profitable company. They are not right now. That's why they're scrambling to try to make it look that way. And if when their second quarter numbers come out, oh man, it's not going to be pretty. But when you look at their businesses, right? There's all this talk about the things they do. Look, okay, they're in chip manufacturing, this big monopoly. And I laugh at that, because chip manufacturing might be the most cost-intensive, capital-intensive business in the entire world. To not only keep up with the trends, but to have big enough economy of scale to produce a profit. Bitmain's a tiny little company. When Samsungs are come in and all these other companies, they will destroy them. So that business is as nothing. ASICs, this whole belief that they're going to be able to mine better, cheaper than everyone else because they have some proprietary thing, is complete BS. They did it initially, and now everyone could do it. I mean, ridiculous. And then then they have this other business, which is BeCash, the business of maintaining BeCash, which for a while worked because they used Roger Ver's propaganda to get these pumps, and Coinbase, they brought in all this. But that game's over now, and it's a big losing position, which they're going to have to realize. So all that's real, and then they throw in, oh, we do AI, which is BS. It's just marketing gimmicks. So all that's left is actual mining. And so the only real business that they have that was a good business was mining Bitcoin, which is being destroyed by the needs of the BeCash network. And oh yeah, all the other miners coming in right now to take market share. So I would say that they are in very, very deep duty, unless the market bails them out with this IPO.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bitmain, we cannot take away Bitmain and Jihan's entrepreneurial success. It is massive. It is truly impressive. But there's nothing special about Bitmain. That's what
they were first mover. They were first mover. That was special, but that doesn't matter anymore.
They were first mover, and they were good first movers in that time frame, in that market. They managed to, create a competitive advantage that cannot last. It simply cannot last. But for those years, for the 2.5, 3 years where they were, dominating the ASIC markets, which are not anymore, and they haven't been producing better miners, which is really bad, right? Because other people have been producing better miners.
Yeah, I mean, what do you tell your banks when you go in public? If you're not good at producing equipment and your mining is like half BeCash, like exactly, like what are you telling people your big strength is right now?
I don't know. I don't know what they. I don't know what they're gonna. What they think they do, because, as you say, they're not like expert chip manufacturers. They were expert at making ASICs for Bitcoin cheap, selling it to the public. That's like a really niche like thing. Like they were really good at making ASIC chips and the miner and selling it worldwide during 2015 to 2017, 2018. So they don't have anything special other than the fact that they took advantage well of a really good opportunity.
And and you know what else? You know what else they had, Francis, that they no longer have? That Chinese subsidy. I don't know how much they've lost of it, but they certainly don't have the Chinese government electricity subsidy they used to have, and they may lose it entirely. So again, this comes down to a great case of competition. They were going to lose market share in a big way, but they really squandered what they have, because for all that's said and done, they have huge losses that they have yet to realize. And again, someone has to bail BCash out. Maybe it's the IPO. We'll talk about that in a second. But without that, they will have wasted several years of first mover advantage and got nothing for it.
Absolutely. And I don't want them to be bailed out. There's nothing I can do to stop an IPO. I mean, they're free to do whatever they want. But if we're talking about what's a good, desirable outcome, the market needs to punish them. Sorry, just a sec. What? Sorry.
Take your time.
Okay, I just told you guys that I was doing this thing to don't make a speaker, so I'm listening live. Can you just like 30 minutes?
No, I'll be back after the outcome creations, and then we'll deliver when we deliver. Those are the choices.
Okay, okay. I'm actually on the show now, guys. Thanks. I'll go into the room. I'll go into the room. Sorry about that, Andy. I'll just take a break for a minute. Just a break.
Okay, I'll talk here. Okay, everyone. Well, while Francis takes a break, he is renovating his offices. The fact is that Francis brings up a point about punishment, that he would like to see them get punished. And you know what? I agree with that, because like we saw the other day, that the BCash network almost was destroyed by a bug. It was found that by a Bitcoin core developer that there was a bug in the software, and if he had exploited it or told people who could have exploited it, there would be no BCash today. The price would probably be in double digits. Probably the whole crypto space would have been in huge turmoil, but only temporarily for Bitcoin. And there would be no more BCash as we know it. Probably it would go down to below 100 on the list. So I mean, that's how precarious it is. And some people were saying that Bitcoin core developer who saved them by telling them about this bug was courageous. He was definitely courageous, and he was definitely noble. But the fact is, my personal belief is it would have been better off if BCash was destroyed, because BCash was a fraud from the beginning. And BCash, the only thing that it did that was positive was show people how strong Bitcoin is and how impervious it is to attack. But that said, that's all water under the bridge. BCash will never be what it was supposed to be. It will steadily decline against Bitcoin in terms of the price. But the fact is, as we'll talk in a minute, the reaction that we have seen has been far less bad than I would have thought, which I think is a bullish thing. Are you there, Francis?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I got the construction guys getting to my new office. Sorry about that.
No problem. I'll just tell you what I was saying, and you can go back to it. I said I agree 100% that there should be no mercy on BCash. It proved that Bitcoin is king and can't be challenged. But then again, it caused a lot of damage, and the world would be better without it. And just like I was saying about how Corey Fields, the core developer who saved BCash last week by telling about its bug, I would have preferred if he just let it die. But then again, he did a noble thing, and the world will keep going on.
Yeah, I mean, what Corey did was a heroic act, to be honest. Because if you read, Corey Fields, by the way, has been like a core developer stealthily building Bitcoin for years. This guy has been a rock of Bitcoin Core as one of its leaders, right? A quiet leader that just makes sure that everything is coded correctly, that there's no bugs, and he is not an altcoiner. He's a Bitcoin maximalist, I think, by reading at his Twitter. So he must have, it was the ethics of open source software that trumped his, probably his financial self-interest and the financial self-interest of Bitcoiners. This is not the kind of thing that happens often. You do not rely on heroes to save you. Like that's you don't rely on Superman to save you if you jump off a building. It can happen once. I think there's like a joke, like Spider-Man is like everybody gets one. Everybody gets one saving Spider-Man, and then if you jump again, you die. So on that note, the likelihood of a catastrophic bug in BeCash is really high, and I say this with the utmost gravity because that is in a certain way that's some financial advice, right? So I don't say that lightly. I am pretty confident that there is at this moment probably a big bug in BeCash that has yet to be discovered. There are rumors of big bugs in BeCash that have been discovered and not disclosed yet, but screw the rumors. There's rumors in crypto all the time. But if you think about it, Bitcoin Unlimited was going to become Bitcoin when Bitmain again and some other companies said, let's do Bitcoin Unlimited. It had 40% hash rate at some point. Like Bitcoin Unlimited, some people in high places were contacting me and they were like, it's a thing, it's gonna happen. I'm like, no, it's not gonna happen. But people thought it was gonna happen. What happened to Bitcoin Unlimited? It had a catastrophic bug and the whole network went down. If Bitcoin had switched to that, Bitcoin would have gone down. And then next, you got Segwit 2x. Segwit 2x wasn't the same thing as Bitcoin Unlimited. Bitcoin Unlimited was weird big block radicals and Bitmain. Segwit 2x was Coinbase, BitPay, Blockchain.info, Zappo, BitGo, maybe not Zappo, sorry, definitely BitGo, and some other companies. These are like Bitcoin software tech companies. Segwit 2x was their plan. They were fully committed to making that Bitcoin. Had we not defeated them, there was another bug in Segwit 2x, the off by one error by Jeff Garzik. The Bitcoin network would have gone down. Now, Bitcoin ABC, BeCash, whatever you want to call it, funded by Bitmain, probably the richest Bitcoin company there is, funded by Roger Ver, probably used to be one of the richest Bitcoiners there was. It has, even though it's a really shit coin, it does have like money around it. You have people building apps on top of it. You got all these Craig Wright, these Unchained people. Still, catastrophic bug in BeCash that would have like literally killed it had it not been discovered and patched responsibly. So what are the odds that there's another bug? Right? They're really, really high. They're really high because you know what? Like there's nobody that has, there's not a lot of people that have skin in the BeCash game. There's a really few amount of people that have skin in the BeCash game. And I don't think any of them are, other than maybe Roger, are really building like on BeCash as a foundation for their future. I think that's what it shows is if Bitmain has such a big position in BeCash and didn't find the bug there, it's because it was accidental. They're not really committed to that. So as a BeCash investor, like you got to ask yourself, like your biggest stakeholder, the biggest tech company in Bitcoin, probably not even able to maintain that thing. Like as an investor in BeCash, I don't know how anybody can be holding BeCash right now.
We'll put it this way, Corey, it was amazing when you think about what he did, because he had to decide, do I want to kill this thing off? Or do I want to help? And it really, in the big picture, it's the best of both worlds, because the shock to the system would have been so huge on a short-term basis, even though it wouldn't take long for people to realize it has nothing to do with Bitcoin. But it would have
been like Mt. Gox in the sense that it would have the market would not have necessarily made a difference between BeCash crashing and like potential vulnerabilities in Bitcoin. It's the same way that a lot of people they think of Mt. Gox as they don't see the difference with Bitcoin. People that are noobs. It would have been terrible news.
Right. It would have been discounted eventually, but it would have been a big deal. And of course, he took great personal risk. But in the big picture, it was the best of both worlds, because he did kill it off by simply exposing the fact that BeCash, with all its supposed money behind it, is vulnerable at any time. And of course, and that was only days before this came out with Bitmain, showing that it actually is a Ponzi that has been artificially supported by one company. And it's one company that clearly desperately needs money, which is why it was selling off its very liquid Bitcoin. And it's going to have to take a huge, huge loss on its, it wants to go public, right? Financial statements. It's going to have to take a huge loss on its BeCash if it sells it. and it's scared to do that. And then they're worried, well, will the street even give us money to do this? So that, you know, in effect, they have killed off BeCash. Will you know, as I and you and others have said for months, it will never be a threat to Bitcoin again, even on a price basis. We're done with the pumps. We're done with all that. And then the other part is that at some point, especially if BeCash goes BeCash, if Bitmain goes public, they're going to have to justify to their investors and their board of directors why they are mining BeCash. And since they're the biggest miner of BeCash, at some point it's inevitable they're going to stop mining BeCash. And when they do, then there will be no one mining BeCash. And as you say, if there are big bugs in it now, just wait until their only real supporter goes away. And that's why I'm so amazed that the price of BeCash is still 8% of a Bitcoin, which I wrote this morning how bullish that is for crypto, meaning there's that much positive sentiment that people don't realize that they're not actually destroying the price of BeCash right now.
No, because they're not selling BeCash. There's a reason why there's a floor of BeCash, is because they're mining it and keeping it.
No, but I'm saying that the street is not
Yep.
discounting that they're going to have to. The street is assuming that they're going to be able to have the capital to maintain it.
Yeah,
Which-
yeah.
And
that's the danger. That's the danger here. The whole BeCash thing has always relied on subsidies, and this is not a government. There's no government. There's no taxes. But there is a way. You know, if you think about it, you know, the stupidity of the new entrants in the market can subsidize bad decisions for a really long time. You know, nobody can convince someone. Only reality can convince someone. And reality takes a really long time to set in Bitcoin, even though it's a fast-paced environment. An example of this is, look at BitPay. How is it possible that BitPay is still alive as a company? They suck. Everybody hates BitPay. If you look at their volumes, they pushed out this weird invoice format that's incompatible with most exchanges and most wallets, BIP70, that made them lose half their volume. They're reviled by the community. They sent an email to all of their users last year, urging them to, you know, upgrade immediately to SegWit 2x. They never sent an email afterwards saying, don't upgrade back, we fucked up. They just sent an email saying, run SegWit 2x, that's Bitcoin. Everybody hates BitPay, and there's no reason why it would still be in the market. They got subsidized really early on by dumb VC money. After that, they got subsidized by Bitmain. Bitmain invested in BitPay. Same thing with Purse.io. Purse.io went full BeCash, subsidized by Bitmain. A bunch of companies went BeCash, paid for by Bitmain. Bitmain invested in a bunch of companies that were friendly during the SegWit 2x debate to their side. And where does Bitmain get its subsidy from? Well, initially it got its subsidy from Bitcoin, but they made a terrible decision, and now they want to get bailed out. And our contention was, you're going to get wrecked. If you go against Bitcoin, you're going to get wrecked. If you go into BeCash, you're going to get wrecked, and the market will learn. And then, you know, you're going to be removed from the gene pool, so that all of you and your minions that, you know, that make bad decisions and don't know where they're into, they're just going to disappear. And if Bitmain gets its IPO, they will not get wrecked. They will get subsidized once more by, you know, dumb money, and they will keep making bad mistakes. And what the message this is going to send is, if you screw up, you're going to get bailed out by the hype.
Right. Well, put it this way. Put it this way. What it's saying is, as I wrote this morning, how bullish it is that the market has handled it so well. I mean, Bitcoin didn't go under the Hoffman line. It didn't go under 100 billion market cap, and BeCash is still 8% of Bitcoin. So, as you say, the quote dumb money will continue, and altcoins will revive, whether they're doing anything or not. I'll end this segment by saying I did a poll. A Twitter poll like a few days ago where I said, look, there's 3 options out here. 2 of them destroy BeCash and 1 of them saves it. 1 is a massive crypto bull market. That saves it. 2 is a massive Bitcoin bull market, but a huge altcoin bear market. And 3, of course, is a massive crypto bear market. Those 2 will kill off Bitmain. And only 40% of the people said we'd have a bull market. But I have a feeling that those 40% are going to be right, because I believe that Bitmain will be bailed out by the dumb money, and they will continue to mine BeCash, except BeCash will just become another altcoin. So on the topic of BeCash, I want to discuss another extremely important topic that few commentators are discussing, even in the Bitcoin community, which is the rapid collapse of many of Bitcoin's, quote, competitors as relates to the race for monetary leadership in the 21st century. For one, altcoins are being exposed, like BeCash, as never before, as having not a chance of usurping Bitcoin as monetary assets. Again, particularly BeCash. BeCash was the only one that had any chance in the first place, but only due to the fraudulent way it was created, portrayed, and manipulated, which, as the entire world now sees, is unceremoniously collapsing. Next, we have precious metals, which have collapsed to multi-year lows in absolute terms and all-time lows in inflation-adjusted terms, while simultaneously an exploding emerging market currency crisis led by the yuan and rupee, where 40% of the world's population live, is exposing history's largest, most destructive fiat Ponzi scheme. To that end, Francis, do you think I'm overstating the weakness in competing monetary assets? And what do you think their weakness portends for Bitcoin's future? Also, what's your best guess on how Bitcoin might react to a currency crisis should it get worse?
I think you're underestimating it, because
Wow.
earlier today you said 95% of all these coins, are pump and dumps, which may be true, but 100% of them have no chance at all of ever winning over Bitcoin. There is a chance. So I had a tweet this morning, and I tweeted because my Bitcoin maximalism rhetoric is increasing as my mind has become clearer and clearer over the last few months. Partly due to Saifedean's book, that helped a lot in clarifying some of my thoughts. But there is no possible way that Bitcoin can coexist with an altcoin in the long term for money. There is absolutely no way that I see where there's a competitive market and the market will choose two different currencies that have two different prices. That's really unlikely. There's many reasons why. The biggest reason why is that whatever comes to have value will be produced more. So if something comes to have value, people will want to produce more of it and devalue it. And the only thing that really stops people from devaluing stuff is the difficulty of production, right? The cost of production. And over the long term, there can only be one coin that's difficult to produce, right? There can only be one proof of work. So if you accept the idea that money is a winner-takes-all game, that there's no reason for the market to have two different monies, just like silver, for example. I used to think a lot about. I used to believe in silver, and I realized there is absolutely no reason for silver to exist in the age of electronic payments, right? Silver had always been used as a smaller unit of account, as a smaller payment method, because gold as a bearer, right? Because even though you're trading gold certificates, these aren't bearer instruments, right? Silver was a bearer instrument that had a value compared to gold, and that's why it was used. But in the age of electronic payments, there's no reason to have silver. Just like in the age of Lightning Network, there's no reason to have cheap payments. That's why in the age of the new private wallets that we're having, there's no reason to have them. And any feature or benefit that an altcoin will do, in order for it to be enough to attract the network effect of Bitcoin, that would need to be like a huge, massive, improvement, like a huge, massive improvement. And I can't think of a feature. And even privacy, as we've seen, is not that feature. People are not using Monero over Bitcoin. Some people are in a really niche way, but people aren't migrating to Monero. So I don't think there's any feature in the world at this time that's even conceivable that would be enough for people to move over to another altcoin. And even if it did, Bitcoin would absorb it. So Bitcoiners and BeCash specifically, when you think about it, it's even more true of BeCash. There are some coins that cannot compete as money, but can exist as a blockchain. I'll give you an example. Ethereum, for example. For all the flack that I give Ethereum, I actually give flack not to Ethereum, but to Ether, the currency. I think Ethereum is awesome. I really do. It's a really great project. It's fantastic. The fact that they chose to create a currency, and you know what? The altcoiners, they never tell their investors that they're competing with Bitcoin as currency. They tell them that they're a product, and but they don't tell the investors, yeah, I'm competing. When you're buying my product, my coin, you're actively competing against Bitcoin, because Ether could have worked with Bitcoin. There's no reason why not. right? You could have had a network of miners, of people that are producing these blocks, that are producing this blockchain, that are just paid for in Bitcoin, right? I was telling this to some EOS people. I was talking to the EOS people. You know, one of my good friends was in EOS. I had a talk with him, and I was open-minded for once about EOS and to understand why he thought EOS was so good. And he told me it's all about the technology. The network is really cool. You can put content in it. He showed me the blockchain. The blocks were spitting out. And I was like, you know what? You know, I agree. Maybe EOS is cool, but EOS did not need a token. You could have just, if people wanted EOS as a service, right? Like this decentralized, whatever it is, decentralized app OS or cloud system. Why couldn't they just pay you in Bitcoin as a block producer, right? What would you not mine? Would you not produce blocks if the users would pay transaction fees in Bitcoin? It's because no one's using it. There's nobody is going to pay for these things. The only way to pay for these things is via rent extraction, via inflation, by these hidden taxes, right? So Ethereum could exist in the long term as its own, not as its own chain now. It's too late for that. But for example, Rootstock is a really good example. Rootstock is basically Ethereum on Bitcoin, and it exists. That can exist. I can see some value going there, but it doesn't need to have its own money. That's a really important thing.
We'll put it this way.
BeCash is the worst of all. And the thing is, even if you're a Bitcoiner and you still don't see that the altcoins are competing with money, because ultimately altcoins are just like a payment method for a service within a blockchain, right? That's essentially what it is. Unless they're advocating themselves as a store of value, which none of them are. They're all advocating that it's some kind of service or product, and the altcoin is, you know, a kind of payment method within that. BeCash itself is directly just aiming to be money, right? And if you're a Bitcoiner, you cannot believe that BeCash and Bitcoin can coexist. To me, it's nonsensical. So if you cannot believe that BeCash and Bitcoin coexist, and if you're being silent on BeCash, or you're going after Bitcoin maximalists that are calling BeCash a scam, and you're saying, no, you know, all coins have a right to live, blah, 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 blah. I'm agnostic. I'm agnostic on BeCash. I don't know. You know, if you're a Bitcoiner and you're saying that, what you're saying is like, you're not confident that Bitcoin can survive. Like, you have no confidence in Bitcoin. You're hedging your Bitcoin with BeCash. That is exactly what you're saying. And only one of them can survive. Both cannot survive. That's just, to me, it's an economic reality. And if people don't accept that, they don't understand the value of Bitcoin, which is fine, and they'll get to it one day. But if people are in Bitcoin, like Bitcoin professionals, and they don't see that, they are in no position to be managing other people's money.
Right. Again, this was actually like a three-part question, and you just got stuck with a little bit on some, but mostly on the first part. So let's finish this part and go on to the other part, because again, I've changed my view of, quote, maximalism, because maximalism is a very ambiguous term, and I think sometimes it's overused a bit. But the fact is, to me, maximalism has to do with monetary property, because altcoins could try to do all kinds of stuff. They can market themselves, but for the most part, they're just speculations, because none can compete with Bitcoin. All the talk that we had, you know, the hype about flippenings, it's fun for speculation. Ethereum flippening and BeCash flippening, and then even in January, it was almost like it was altcoin flippening. But that's all over. I think everyone's learned that the people like us who said all along that Bitcoin's monetary dominance can't be challenged, that's forever silence. We will never again, ever, ever, ever have another coin talking about being Bitcoin and competing with Bitcoin. That's over and done with. Now, that said, I do believe in a multi-trillion-dollar industry, which we're going to see replacing hundreds of billions of dollars of legacy markets, stocks, bonds, all kinds of things. I do believe there are going to be cryptocurrency use cases of the future that are going to be valuable. I have no doubt about that, but nothing to do with monetary. You're not going to be competing with Bitcoin for anything. You have to create your own niche. That niche may be a store of value. I mean, I happen to think that B-Rhodium may have a niche, but it has nothing to do. If you compete with Bitcoin on anything, if you say we want to do what Bitcoin does, you're dead. Now, the other part of the question was, how does that relate to the fact that precious metals are literally turning into commodities? And as I've said all along, once the older generations that own probably 90% of them pass on, their kids are going to sell the gold and silver so quick that you won't even be able to blink, and they're going to be buying crypto with it. And then, of course, you have fiat currencies around the world serially crashing, led by the two largest, the rupee and the yuan. Do you think that Bitcoin's ability to take real monetary share from the real world is a lot closer than we think, or is it never going to be able to do that?
I think it's closer than we think, and I think more importantly, I didn't used to believe that that fiat would disappear because of Bitcoin. I thought that naively, when I was asked by a journalist or someone, do you think fiat will disappear? I would say, well, no, maybe they'll coexist. I don't think that anymore. I think it's a fight to the death, and I think only one can win. And I think nobody has ever seen true competition on a global scale without any possible barrier to entry. I doubt it's ever existed before cryptocurrencies, because cryptocurrencies compete with each other in an extremely competitive market without any form of barrier to entry. People seem to think that cryptos are like fiat currencies. Oh, well, the US dollar dominates, but there's still Canadian dollars, there's still Australian dollars. You know why? It's because the governments have guns and you don't have guns. Your altcoin, you cannot point a gun at someone's head and say, pay with this altcoin. It's true competition. So people have a problem in seeing the possibility of having only a winner takes all, a global actual monopoly that's unchallengeable. Another thing also is,
well, the dollar's had that for years. People like to talk about the euro and everything, but the dollar, really, a country with only 8% of the population, has dominated the world for decades, just like the Great Britain pound did for centuries. It can happen.
Yeah, it can happen, but other currencies still exist, and the only reason why we're not using US dollars right now, or in the world's not, I'm Canadian, right? So the only reason why I'm not using the most liquid and available currency with the largest network effect is that I am physically forced to not do that, right? I am physically forced, and it's not like people don't have emotional attachments to their currencies or historical attachment to their currencies, like they have languages, for example. So another argument,
only gold, and now Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. I tell people often, a cryptocurrency is like a language, right? It's really it. It's just a network, right? It's just an agreed upon protocol for communication. That's really what it is. And making an altcoin is like making the usefulness and the technical imagine Esperanto, for example. That's a good example. Esperanto was this made up language, which was, on paper, if Esperanto had a white paper, it would be like, EOS, right? It has the best vocabulary, the best grammar. It's easy to understand by the most people. It's intuitive for most speakers, this made up UN world language, Esperanto, and yet no one's using it. Like, people will not look at these coins based on the useful features. They're just going to be using whatever currency is the one that dominates. And one thing I want to slide in there is that I think that the most dangerous mentality in this space has been that utility drives value. I think that is a mistake that I'm realizing now it was an idea that was very, very prevalent in the altcoin investor space. I just read this paper by Union Square Ventures called Fat Protocols. And I had no idea what that theory was. And I read it recently because people were laughing at the theory, saying, oh, it was so dumb all along. And I was like, what is this fat protocol theory? And I read it. It was one of the most stupid things I've ever read, in economics. It was so bad. And I think a lot of the market, these oracles, these influencers, I don't think I saw them because they're not on my Twitter timeline, but they were out there. Utility does not drive value at all in a currency, at all. Utility is mainly a minor, very, very minor prerequisite for something to be a currency, right? So scarcity is what drives value, but a thing cannot become a money if it's just scarce, right? Like, I could create a piece of metal that's unique, like a meteorite, and it's not going to become money. There's some prerequisites.
It's the opposite. It's the exact opposite. And that, look, we just had a bubble. We had a pump and dump bubble. Everyone jumped onto Bitcoin, Ethereum success, creating their own currencies that had no value and saying, yeah, well, it's the utility. We have this utility and that makes us valuable. The fact is that it's safe to say pretty much all of them had no utility. And so
they have no utility whatsoever. The currency itself has no utility, because what you have to think about is the features that you're advertising, if you want them to have value, they need to be scarce. Forget the coin. Think about the feature, right? So if you think about Ethereum, what's scarce? Let's talk about Bitcoin. What's scarce in Bitcoin? And what are Bitcoin's features that are unique and irreproducible? There's three that I know of, right? That are unique and irreproducible. There's censorship resistance, which means that nobody can stop anybody from using Bitcoin or transacting. There's immutability, which is once something is in Bitcoin, it's never going to disappear. And there's trustless validation, means that you can know yourself that you received money. You can validate yourself that you received money and that the money is real and that it's not counterfeited. These are the three features of Bitcoin, and they are scarce. Why? Because they're not a feature of the code. Like there's nothing in the code that makes Bitcoin immutable, or trustless validation, right? Because, and just a side note, Ethereum doesn't have trustless validation. When you're using Augur, you're using an Explorer, an Inferno node. It is impossible to run an Ethereum node. So you are always trusting someone on Ethereum, unless you are a dev. And even my devs have big problems syncing Ethereum nodes. And I don't even think we have a synced Ethereum node. And we're not, we play around with some altcoins just for fun sometimes, just to see the technology and stuff. So trustless validation is something that is a feature of the scalability roadmap of Bitcoin.
And it's also not immutable, as we learned. And BeCash is
exactly. It's not immutable. And where do these features come from? They come from the network effect, right? Because the reason why it's immutable is because there is a network effect that will refuse a change, right? It's not, I can make a copy of Bitcoin on my computer and change it. Like the ledger itself is not immutable. It's the network effect that makes it immutable. What makes it censorship resistant? Again, it's that network effect, because if there was censorship to be had, people will move away because that's a value proposition. Same thing with trustless validation. So these are things that are extremely difficult to reproduce, because to reproduce them, you would have to reproduce Bitcoin's immaculate conception. You would have to reproduce Satoshi disappearing without a leader. You would have to reproduce, it's a chicken and egg problem, right? Every cryptocurrency has a chicken and egg problem, which is they are only useful if they're adopted. Something really interesting also is that Bitcoin changes as it gets adopted, right? And that's something that Mises got wrong. For example, like in Mises's regression theorem, I don't think he realized that some things can become more scarce over time, and that this scarcity actually creates new features. So that's my entire value proposition argument.
Yeah.
These
Well,
altcoins,
Ethereum,
just to finish that point specifically. So and these scarce features are the one that the market must value. If there's other features that the market values of your cryptocurrency, it doesn't matter unless they're scarce. Like Ethereum, for example. Ethereum is one of the only blockchains or cryptos that does have something scarce. And for the altcoin basher and Bitcoin maximalist I actually, Ether might be the only one that I have a slight appreciation for, is because the censorship resistant computing that is possible with Ethereum, which would allow someone to theoretically, run like a drug market online and have Turing smart contracts that are censorship resistant and that are not on the server. That is real. That is something that's scarce and really hard to reproduce. But that's not what people value. People don't value that. No drug market is running on Ethereum. That should like pose a lot of questions.
That's why the government said Ethereum is not a security; it's a commodity, because they've sufficiently made themselves into something that's useful, that can't be that really, for the most part, can't be censored. Yes, they.
Yeah.
I mean,
so what people value in Ethereum is one thing that they did really well. It is standardization and cross compatibility, right? So the only reason why Ethereum ever came to dominate is the invention of the ERC20 standard, which made it so that anybody could launch a shitcoin and have the Ethereum wallet be the wallet. People didn't have to download wallets. I don't know if you remember back in the day, for every app, you needed to have your own like full node wallet, and it was a pain in the ass, and you have like 50 wallets on your computer. It would be a nightmare. The only thing that Ethereum did is like, oh, well, now you can have all these apps in like one browser. That's really the only innovation that they did, was to standardize the ERC20 standard. And what people value Ethereum for is not the censorship resistance. I think we can all agree on that, because when you read newspaper articles, it's always like X bank is doing like mortgage on the blockchain on Ethereum. Like no one's valuing at all censorship resistance for that thing. And all of the features of Ethereum can be copied by Tron.
Ethereum is a tech stock. It's a new age tech stock. It's not a money. That's the big difference. Look, again, Satoshi was an ordinary man. He wasn't a god. He had a simple concept that let's create a cryptocurrency that is decentralized, that people can trade, make trades without the government interfering or getting in the middle. That was his initial thought. The problem, but what it morphed into.
I disagree with you there because Ethereum is not a tech stock. It is money. Ether is money.
Okay.
It's just bad money, but it is money. That's what it is. Like you can't pitch Ether as something like, even the Ether people, they cannot pitch it as a decentralized world computer. Ether, the currency, they can pitch the EVM.
That's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that theoretically it's a quote cryptocurrency, but to me, I look at it as a technological innovation that people are speculating on, as opposed to look. Bitcoin's initial white paper was we need to have a decentralized currency, but what he didn't realize is that once people started to believe in it, especially once he disappeared, that it became a storage of value above everything else. And like you said, utility doesn't make value. Of course not. There's no way that I'm going to spend my Bitcoin until I think that it's worth what it should be, and then it will become value. And that's the problem with creating fiat currencies or ERC tokens. Simply creating them doesn't give them value. What gives them value is the network effect, is that people believe that they are going to appreciate over time. It's that simple.
And I think people, they can't see that because so many people are blind to that. And it's like, well, it can't be because, look at everybody around me that are believing this. It's like, it's such a huge deception. And okay, I'm going to put myself in the mind of an altcoin investor and tell me if that's correct. When I'm buying a cryptocurrency, I'm speculating that it's going to get adopted in the future. I'm going to speculate that it's going to be more useful in the future and that people will buy more of it. I think that is the base assumption, that is the premise of every altcoin investor. Would you agree that that's it? Like that is like people, they look at a crypto and they're like,
well, you know how they look at
more adopted? Because the premise in their mind is that there's a limited amount.
This is how the average person looks at cryptocurrency. I mean, we are not the average people. We have been way into this and we understand what it means. But most people, when they look at crypto, they think that they equate it to like the stock market. They're like, okay, EOS is a stock. It's a company that does this and it's going to become really big and we should buy it because of that. They don't realize that you're buying a cryptocurrency because it's going to, be money, or it's going to create a new role in the world, where most of them, just about all of them, have no chance of ever doing that. So there will be something that creates value aside from Bitcoin, but cryptocurrency is trying, currency. It's trying to be money. And once the average person realizes that Bitcoin is a monetary competitor to fiat and gold, as opposed to some high-tech stock that goes up and down based on speculation of quote adoption, then they'll get it. Right now, they don't get it. That's why most people think that Ethereum and EOS are the same thing as Bitcoin. Uh-oh, Francis froze. Okay, I will give him a minute to see if he unfreezes. We're almost at an hour anyway. The other things, I had two other topics I was going to discuss. Francis.
I'm back. Sorry again. My laptop battery filled. Sorry about that, guys.
No problem. Well, look,
can you see me?
Yeah. Yes. It's good. Look,
there we go.
So your battery doesn't fail anymore, and we're just about an hour anyway, and you got so much going on. I had two other things I was going to bring up. I'm only going to bring up one just because of the time constraints in your computer. And I want to talk about the hash power again. I don't need you to go through what you've gone through before about how it takes a long time for decisions to be made and everything. But I just wanted to address the fact to people and give them an update. Say, look, the hash rate is as high as it's ever been. And now with BeCash having its problems, it's likely to get higher. I mean, where do you see the state of the Bitcoin network and the quote cost of mining? And what do you see it looking like a year from now?
Yeah, so what I can say is that transactional volume in terms of Bitcoin usage, Bitcoin app usage, as far as I've been seeing it, is very, very high right now. So that leads me to believe that the Bitcoin price is a little bit undervalued as compared to before, right? Because the actual usage of Bitcoin, people are still using Bitcoin. People are selling and buying Bitcoin a lot, even though the price has been going down. The network itself is really strong, like increasing. And I'm really mind blown that there hasn't been a massive difficulty decrease as a result of the price. That means that people are investing a lot in the capital, in the infrastructure. So I meet a bunch of hedge funds that are philosophically becoming Bitcoin maximalists in their investing philosophy and their value theory. And a lot of the people that I meet, they want to invest in the infrastructure. They want a share of the network. And even though the best way to do that for them would just be to buy Bitcoin, somehow they're convinced that they need to diversify in different areas of Bitcoin by investing in the infrastructure. So people are investing right now money in making chips. People, I mean, I'm not into mining anymore that much just because in Quebec, it's become so toxic and frustrating. But there are a lot of people that are investing in chips, that are investing in hardware, that are investing in technology, network technology. I'm investing personally in a lot of full node software. Like I'm building full node running software, even though you know it might seem like a weird investment to invest in open source software, but people want to invest in the infrastructure of the network, and they are doing so. So from a network protocol point of view, Bitcoin has never been better. And there's things that are coming out like people don't see that, like the Dandelion BIP 156. Ask anybody what that is. Like nobody's going to know what that is. That is massive improvement to Bitcoin's infrastructure for broadcasting transactions. Like right now, when you broadcast a transaction from your Bitcoin node, you're just sending it to other Bitcoin nodes directly, and everybody sees it. Right now with Dandelion, it's kind of like a grenade on a timer. You're sending secret transactions around, and then poof, at some point it will broadcast to the network so that snoops can't look at where the transaction was coming from. These are the kind of infrastructure. There's another great BIP coming out, BIP 174. What that's going to allow people to do is to connect their hardware wallets directly to their Bitcoin full nodes and to sign transaction completely. That's a huge security and UX improvement at the Bitcoin protocol and network level. People don't see that, but this is what drives the value, making Bitcoin stronger, because realistically, like the only thing that protocol devs have to do is just to make sure that Bitcoin is secure for the users, make sure that using Bitcoin doesn't get you in trouble, that it's private. That's really it. That's what they're doing. Making sure that running Bitcoin nodes is so that you can have that trustless validation is easy to do, making sure it's decentralized enough to keep that censorship resistance and immutability properties. And they're working really, really hard on that every single day. So just because you don't see like Turing completeness on the Bitcoin blockchain and all these fancy, crazy features that you may want, it doesn't mean that the Bitcoin network protocol is not improving. It's absolutely improving. So, you know, I'm a perma bull. I'm always a perma bull. And what I'm, you know, the thing that I'm going to close off on is that right now, much of my team is focused on preparing our emergency contingency plan for massive user influx, which we did not have in the bubble, in the run-up. We weren't ready for that massive user influx. So we had to deal with the whole bubble and back. And now that things have calmed down a little bit, we're doing contingency plans. We're hiring people. We're automating customer support, preparing again for that massive user influx, because we know that the fundamentals of Bitcoin have not changed. The value proposition has not changed. And, you know, right now is a really, really good time to start. Every big Bitcoin company that you see made massive investments and raised tons of money in 2015, 2016, 2014, when Bitcoin was in a bear market. And you know, if you're working in a Bitcoin project, right now is really the time to take this period of calm in the market and to invest in your infrastructure. And that's what, you know, the smart people that I know are doing.
Yeah. So, you know, and I'll conclude by saying, look, the downward forces that we've seen on Bitcoin this year, number one, of course, was the altcoin bubble that was created by Ethereum and created by Wall Street crypto hedge funds that all came in when, what do you know, $100 billion market cap got hit. Then, of course, you had the Mt. Gox trustee who is selling for non-fundamental reasons and is done. And then, of course, as we just learned this week, the Bitmain has probably sold more than the Mt. Gox trustee to save itself. These are non-fundamental factors that have pushed the price down. On the upside, of course, we have the Hoffman line. These institutions have supported the price 5 times at 100 billion, and it doesn't look like they're going to stop anytime soon based on what Francis is saying about the transactional demand, which is going up. And of course, these monetary developments that we're talking about of gold crashing, fiat currencies crashing. And oh yeah, there's that little thing called the halving, which a year from now, not only will we be discounting the Bitcoin halving a year from now, but the Litecoin halving will actually be occurring exactly a year from now. And believe me, Wall Street will take notice of what Litecoin does. So on that note, I'm going to conclude, and thank you so much. You see, Francis is upgrading his office, just like he's getting all his contingency plans ready for the next boom. Again, follow him on Twitter at Francis Pouliot _. Look for him on all the leading podcasts. Check out his businesses, Catalaxy.com and Bills.com. And as for me, please check out my daily blog at CryptoGoldCentral.com. Follow me at Andy_Hoffman_CG, or contact me at ahoffman@CryptoGoldCentral.com. Thanks very much. Thank you, Francis, and have a great crypto day.